Hello again and welcome to the Middle Class Voice. You can see us. Isn't this a treat, Dave? we're trying something new.
I know everybody. Everybody's excited.
And he's Dave Glue Harris, and there's a reason that you have not seen our faces to this point because it's a treat. But we got a little wild here this evening and decided we would do an audio-visual presentation of the Middle Class Voice and let you first off see just how bloody handsome we are. Secondly, we wanted to go ahead and touch on some of the issues of the day, but we wanted to kind of use this new format, Dave, to kind of remind people of what we're all about here. I am a conservative libertarian. You are an independent whatever, and we are keenly interested in politics. We are keenly interested in the events of the day. We are keenly interested, quite frankly, in just the culture of being a modern day resident of the United States. And we see things that alarm us, quite frankly. And we wanted to bring up to create the Middle Class Voice simply because we felt that the concern of the common man and women were simply not being adequately addressed from a national standpoint. And I know this is something we go back to the 2016 election where we were told repeatedly that the Democratic candidate was a shoo-in, but we both felt something was occurring underneath the surface that was being either ignored or not reported, and it turned out to be exactly the case. But of course, you nailed it. I mean, you called the Trump victory. I can't take credit for that. But we wanted to do this, and I'll let you kind of follow up on this, just to give people a voice to talk about the things that interest them, just as John and Jane Doe, U.S. citizen.
Yeah, and Chuck, I think what the biggest issue here with the middle class voice that we want to focus on is not to have who cares what Chuck says and who cares what Dave says. I really don't care. I'm not here to persuade anybody. I know you're not. We're here to lay out different opinions. We want to hear opinions, but we also want to lay out the news of the left news, center news, right news, diagonal across the street news.
And we will give our opinion, but that's just the way it is.
We will. But that's, and again, that's not what you and I have been about. Obviously, we've got our own opinion, like everybody does, and we want to respect everybody's. But the biggest thing is, when you turn on the mainstream media or you turn on, I just forgot, Fox News. you turn on Fox News, you know what to expect, right or wrong, whether you agree or not. That's just where it is.
Right.
But I think what gets lost in translation here is that there's so many areas. You can just scour the internet. Google, I watch MSNBC. I'm not talking about just the TV, but their website, social media. You're a big social media person. To go to MSNBC, CNN, CNBC, all the ABC, CBS, the old network, Fox News, but scour the websites, search and look up these issues, the issues at present, past, and stuff that's coming up that we know about, that maybe laws that are trying to be passed or things that are going to be heard. Look that stuff up for yourself. The problem is not all of us have, or they're not a news junkie like me or you, and people don't have the time. So our goal for the middle class voice has not been to shun anybody, not to fight, not to argue with people, but to say, this is where we are with this issue. This is the left side, center side, right side. I am an independent, and I want to know who I'm going to vote for. If I'm going to vote Democrat again, or if I'm going to vote Republican again, I want to know the facts for that. So, and to take all that guesswork and all that research time out for other people, that's sort of what you and I do here, and that's what been our goal.
Move your microphone back closer to you. You just hit your microphone, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
But yeah, our goal is just not to sit and say, you better listen to Dave, and what Dave and Chuck say are the truth. We really are trying to research all this stuff and take all that time away from everybody to do that, so they can hear it here. And we want to hear other people's opinions too.
Yeah. And our opinions, you and I are, we certainly lean to the right. I don't think there's any question about that. But I mean, we're most interested in just, good, honest, vigorous debate about things. And we're not getting an awful lot of that these days. We're getting good, the vigorous part, but I don't think it's very honest sometimes, unfortunately. But
we've discussed a lot of issues since we've started I don't know how many podcasts we've done and interviews, and discussions we've done, and you and I have discussed this stuff for probably a year and a half or 2 years. When you come to Obamacare, North Korea, all these big issues, there's also smaller issues that affect people that not everybody wants to talk about. Some of the stuff, the privatization of prisons, we've talked about universal health care, those kind of things. And I think even though we see with our guests differently sometimes, and sometimes we're right on it. Sometimes I'm more liberal about certain issues, and we can sit and agree to disagree or agree to agree, and it needs to just remain a gentleman or a gentlewoman and respectful to each other. And that's where the mainstream media, I feel like, is just blowing the hell out of this, out of the water. I mean,
controversy sells. I mean, two people agreeing and shaking hands is not going to get a headline, but two people arguing and shouting and getting each other's faces, that's going to be on the 24/7 networks, and that's unfortunate. I was in the news business for a year or two, and and the old adage is, if it bleeds, it leads. That is, if it's something spectacular, gory, or sensational, and heck yeah. I mean, I understand the appeal of a good lead story, of a juicy lead story, but I always liked my newscast in the past to reflect what's going on, to downplay on the sensational side. And I like to think that, my legacy doing news in the Danville, Virginia area was that our news was very straightforward. I'll say this, people, think I'm, super duper right guy. I've received twice as many complaints about my newscasts from Republicans as Democrats over the years. That is the God's honest truth. I don't know if Republicans have thinner skin. I don't know. But,
you didn't vote for Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
You didn't vote for Trump.
I did not
a lot
vote
of
for Trump.
People, I think you defend a lot of the Constitution. I think you defend a lot of the law. I know that. And I think that people mistake that right now in this era as you're a Trump defender, and the heck you are. You and I don't see eye to eye.
I have taken him to task several times, and will continue to, and that's fine. And for those who voted for Trump and just holding their, I understand. I mean, God knows I understand. I was no Hillary fan. Still ain't with that. And quite frankly, as we shift to talking about current events, those who looked at the election choices in 2016 and said, boy, one of these candidates is going to be able to choose the next couple of Supreme Court justices. And if they base their vote for Trump on that, you are vindicated. My goodness, Justice Anthony Kennedy announced today that he was retiring effective at the end of July. This, of course, came after 5-4 rulings this week. Again, 5-4. It's always 5-4 on the big stuff. Where he cited.
When you're talking about that 5-4 ruling, explain what you posted the other day. I forget which social media, if it was private page or the Middle Class Voice private page. Explain that the amount of Muslim countries that the ban on, that the Obama administration targeted those countries, not Trump administration. But explain that real quick, that statistic.
On Tuesday, the Supreme Court on a 5-4 vote upheld Trump's authority basically to enact a travel ban, which included 8 countries. 6 of them are Muslim majority nations. There are 49 Muslim majority nations on planet Earth. Of the 10 or the 12 most populous Muslim nations, this travel ban includes 1, Iran. It impacts 8% of the world's Muslim population. It also includes North Korea and Venezuela, who have no Muslim population to speak of. And call it a Muslim ban, which a lot of mainstream legacy-type media folks did, is completely misrepresentative. Keith Ellison, the reliably terrible senator from Minnesota, representative from Minnesota, called it a Muslim, an all-out Muslim ban, as is to suggest that it prevents any Muslim. No, that's the kind of crap we're trying to fight here. I mean, this has nothing to do with a comprehensive. If I were an evil scientist, Dave, and I were trying to devise a.
You look like an evil scientist.
Yeah, well, I do my best. If that were my thing, if I were Dr. Freaking Evil, and I were trying to come up with policy that would prevent Muslims from coming to the U.S., and I gave my minions orders to come up with something like that, and they presented something like this to me, I'd fire them. because this only impacts 8% of the world's Muslims. And even then,
Right.
the original travel ban was for 90 days just to try to re-vet these nations or try to reevaluate these nations' vetting processes. So yeah, again, this is what we're talking about. To call it a Muslim ban is completely misrepresentative. But yeah, that was a 5-4 vote.
Well, when you look at that Muslim ban talk, I understand how anybody middle to left, middle with me, I guess, to left, could see Trump on a roll with his rallies and talking about not letting certain Muslim groups. But I understand.
Yeah, I don't like the rhetoric either. It's
I don't ever defend his rhetoric. I mean, that stuff's silly, and he gets himself into trouble with that. That kind of rhetoric when they're trying to decide these court cases, I understand that. But the fact of the matter is, what you said is statistically accurate.
Yeah.
And so there is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Now, if he said, I want, 40, and then there's going to be 41, 42 countries, and he started doing that, or if we saw this and then all of a sudden there's another 30 or 40, obviously we would know something's up.
Yeah, and of course
that's just not the case.
Yeah, and the legal question at hand here was whether or not the president had the authority to do this. And I read a lot of legal scholars who know a heck of a lot more about things than I do, who thought this might be a 9-0 ruling because it was so obvious that, yes, of course the president has the authority to do this. The Constitution specifies Congress, and where they relinquish power or where they allow it, that the executive branch can do this. Well, certainly Congress has given past presidents the authority to do things like this. So to me, the legal question here, which is what we're supposed to be focused on in the Supreme Court, had nothing to do with what Trump might have said at a rally in 2016. The question was whether or not he had the authority to do this, and most clearly he did. I
think Clarence Thomas was Justice.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas was voted in favor.
Mm-hmm.
And are you able to hear me okay? Sorry.
I am, yeah. We just had a little hiccup there.
Thomas voted in favor of this, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to have a Muslim ban or the old racist talk,
right?
I don't think he's going to do that. I don't see that's going to happen. I think obviously if there was proof of that or evidence of that or worry of that, it wouldn't have been a 5-4. And also, I don't think that an African-American judge would do that either.
Well, and again, to me, non-lawyer here, full disclosure, but to me, the legal question here, whether or not the president had the authority to do that, is clear. Of course, the president does, and that's what the Supreme Court was supposed to be deciding. But the fact that these always come down to 5-4 votes, the Heller decision on gun rights a few years ago was a 5-4 vote.
Yeah.
To me, it was a slam dunk. Of course, but we were one freaking vote away from having what I think very basic constitutional protections that would have rendered the Second Amendment absolutely toothless. And I'm not going to stand for that. But again, it is.
Well, how do you think this will affect Kennedy?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. You.
How do you think this will affect? How do you think it'll affect with Kennedy?
Well, we're seeing, quite frankly, a meltdown from the far left anyway. And Kennedy was a moderate judge. I mean, if you remember during the court's decision on the gay marriage case, he ruled Obergefell, I guess it was, the majority there, where gay marriage was upheld by the Supreme Court. So he was the sort of the quintessential swing vote. Now, if people are getting this upset over a moderate that Trump will replace, imagine what's going to happen if in a year or two Souter or Ginsburg retires or passes away or whatever. Oh my goodness gracious! It's going to be pseudo Armageddon, unfortunately. But
and that's the impact for decades.
Yeah, and I hate it because the way society has gone here, the way our government has gone, the Congress has abdicated a lot of its power to the executive branch, and we have given much more to the judicial branch than was originally intended. Congress has freely taken a back step on a lot of things that they're supposed to be impacting. Gorsuch made a ruling in a case earlier this year that went against what Trump wanted, but the idea was that this is not a judicial decision. This is a congressional decision. You have to maintain that separation of powers.
I talked about this the other day about Chris Cuomo's got this new show on CNN. I watch CNN and Fox News a lot on TV. I like to hear
folks, Dave's the one that watches this stuff on TV. I can only read it. I can't watch it on TV and maintain.
I'm a real visual. I read
this.
I mean, just the immigration stuff. I've read probably, I don't know, close to 75 or 100 articles just the last week and a half. And all over ACLU, human rights groups, to the journals, the Post, the Times, Tribunes. I've read it all. I've read the websites for the news organizations, and I still like to have them visual. I have to see interviews. I have to see how people are responding. I have to see if they're hot-headed. Would I even want to believe what they're saying? Are they really emotional about it? Or are they just flippant about it? What's Congress really doing? But Chris Cuomo, right. And Chris Cuomo has this new show. I don't even know the name of it. It's okay, but he ends up bashing Republicans still in the middle of it. But he starts off and he wants this great debate as one of them. And the debates usually start off okay, but then he sort of gangs up with the Democrat and gangs up on the Republican with the Democrats' help. But the other night he had Kamala Harris. We talked about this on the podcast. And he pretty much said, so what are you as a congresswoman going to do? Well, it was sort of, we're going to bring it to light. We're going to do this and do that about the immigration. He said, yeah, but we already know this part. What are you going to actually do? Charlie.
I've got a visitor coming down here.
But, they want to know.
Middle-class voice.
Hey, man.
This is Charlie.
How are you, bud?
What are you doing down there, buddy? I am recording live, buddy, okay? Okay.
Bye, bud. See ya. But, you have...
Just 12 years old, just for those of you watching this, by the way.
He's so awesome. But you have him asking her, what are you going to do? What's Congress going to do? Yeah. And she doesn't answer other than we're going to just do, we're going to talk and we're going to bring to light. And then he says something to the effect of, action without word. I'm sorry, words without action. Yeah. Words without action. And I love the fact that he is in this show. He tends to sort of, lay the smack down a little bit on whoever he's interviewing, say, Congress has to act. And I'll tell you, Chuck, Congress's rating, their approval ratings, the polls, somewhere
below genital warts, I believe.
It's awful, man. It's awful. And when this president's approval rating is better than Congress, that even says something. Yeah. But when you have Congress who doesn't act, the right didn't act with Obama, the left's not acting now. Everybody wants to obstruct. I mean, sometimes I understand when I was younger, I would hear elderly people say, the hell with them. We need to get rid of the lot of them and start over and
throw the rascals out.
I understand. Yeah, the older I get, I understand it because there is so much stagnation right now. And I think that going back to what you said, Congress has to act better. Congress has to act. Congress has to work together. And a lot of these laws, they could work so hard together. And I don't understand this 100 and some days of work a year. I forgot. I read a statistic.
It's just a nice round number. That's all it is.
Yeah. And to think that they're being paid there as our representatives and not actually working for us or going all-nighters, doing whatever it takes to make things legit, whether you like or dislike the immigration policy, to go out and do something about it. We've discussed this a lot.
Yeah, immigration. To me, this I don't want to say it's an easy fix, but it has to be a congressional fix.
It does.
Executive order is simply a Band-Aid. And of course, I mean, quite technically, the executive order that Trump issued last week vis-a-vis the immigration issue is, quite frankly, in violation of Flores, which has the 20-day stand. Yeah. Now, we can do something with that in Congress and make everything legit on the up and up and prevent the family separations, which you and I both do not want to see. We could do much better at that.
Right.
But as long
as the Judge Dolly G was at Ninth Circuit Court. I mean, Judge Dolly G can say no.
Yeah.
This is going to go back to what I said, and that's going to null and void some of this executive action or make it very difficult.
Unfortunately, I mean, I don't want to say it's an easy fix, but it is fixable. But the problem is the only true fix can come from Congress. And until they get together and pass something, we're going to be governed by executive order, which our prior president was very fond of, but that's no way to govern a country. The one other thing,
and Chuck,
go ahead.
You're not reaching, well, if you're not reaching across the aisle, if you're not a left reaching over to the right or right to the left, nothing's ever going to happen. And if you're going to wait and see until all hell breaks loose, and Armageddon's not going to happen with these kind of issues yet. But if you're going to wait until all hell breaks loose and then say, now we got to, we want to play the blame game. We want to use these kids or these children as political pawns on both sides. If you're going to do that, then obviously you're not doing your job.
They need to be fixing the problem. Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah. I think America's savvy enough. I know America's savvy enough to understand what's going on with that. We don't like, just to continue on the immigration thing for a second, sure. We don't like what's happening with these kids, but we didn't like it. Everything I've researched, the article you and I are working on has 30 references right now showing things from Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton. And in there are things like that. Just because of things from 1996, things have happened under Clinton and Bush, of giving birth, illegal immigrant women giving birth with shackles on. Yeah. Not under Obama, not under Trump, giving birth with shackles on, the babies being taken from them immediately. And those are under Chicago Tribune articles with a Washington Post liberal writer exposing this stuff years ago.
People this is 15 years ago, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and people never seem to care. So again, nobody wanted to act on it. I think you have to give credit to Trump on the fact that whether his tactics are right or wrong or however he goes about, his tactic can be really rough. Yeah. I think the fact that he is hitting some of these issues head on, the guy's got some tough skin, and it's doing it for his party or whatever. He's hitting stuff head on.
And again, it doesn't forgive anybody that it happened long ago. I don't like to play the whatabouts game any more than anybody else does. But the big difference with Trump, of course, was the policy set forth 6-7 weeks ago, where the separations would become more or less mandatory for those suspected of illegal immigration. I understand what they're trying to do there in terms of providing a disincentive, but it ain't working. Right. And so when it's not working, you've got to go back and re-examine. All right, I've got a little bit of beer left here. Let's talk about let's talk about that little small hole in the wall in Lexington, Virginia, which is now in the news this week.
The red hen laid in it. Hey, speaking, I got to tell you, you were talking about these funny things that you had to do for in the news, the stories. I used to as a writer. Some of my editors I've dealt with for 20 years as a writer, almost 20 years writing fitness articles, obesity, motivational, inspirational. They always told me, they got on me because I had these very boring, clear, descriptive titles, and they're saying, Dave, I'm sorry, but that doesn't sell.
It up a little bit.
Yeah, so I would do like a 4 weeks to monster mass. Muscle building article.
Hey, that sells, baby. That sells.
Right. Hundreds of thousands of hits in months. Huge amount of them. Yeah. But go ahead. This red hen thing is just it's wild.
Then again, I mean, we know the details by now. She showed up. She was apparently on vacation in Lexington this weekend. Showed up Friday night there, and apparently her presence alerted or triggered some of the staff there. They called the owner and co-owner, and she came over and politely asked her to leave, and she left, and that was that. Now, again, I've heard the ancillary stories, and I've been kind of reluctant to share them just because I'm not comfortable with the sourcing about them allegedly going across the street where Sanders' relatives were still eating. Now, I don't know if that's true, so I'm not going to say. But the whole thing is, and again, I have to be consistent. If you have what you feel is a moral objection to providing services to someone, then you should be able to do that. I don't like it. Right. I don't like it a bit. But, I have to respect that. And to Sanders' credit, I think the only thing she did wrong was tweeting about it from her official government account. Again, that's a small quibble, though. I don't see what there's anything about that. But she basically, it was already viral at that point. She didn't fan the flames anymore, and they already had been fanned. But, Chuck, this little hole in the wall has become quite the talk.
It has. And I think this whole thing's run afoul with the red hen. No, wait, that didn't work.
Oh,
I think Sorry. I think just my pun messed me up. I think that the big issue, people said, what was she doing 165 miles away from DC or whatever? When I sent you the other day, that video of the farm, she was there at
I saw
like a
the
retreat,
B&B, a little retreat,
little vacation, picking up her own eggs and farm raised eggs and just a real earthy type vacation, her and her husband and our family. And she really seems like a really good person. I think nobody would deny, if she didn't work for Trump, I think she would have no issues. I think she just seems like a really sweet girl. But I tell you, as a side story, years ago, I was going to do an article. I think I got an assignment to do an article with Mike Huckabee from an editor about, he had lost like 105 or 110 pounds. I had to research him. And we were getting ready to do the article, and I cannot remember he was running for vice president. He's running for president.
Yeah,
president or vice president.
Yeah, because he was he lost his weight after he was governor, I believe. So he was in one of his presidential runs in. Yeah.
And he, I think when he lost the weight, they asked me to go and get this interview because I did celebrity interviews and that kind of stuff. And so sometimes I would get him, and sometimes I got turned down. I got turned down by Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'd get turned down. So I got accepted to do this, but his campaign manager, I want to say David Johns or some super nice guy from Huckabee. He emails me maybe a couple days before the interview and says, we're not going to be able to do the weight loss interview. He's going to come out with some news about Fox News. Remember, he started that show.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Okay.
Yeah. He started with Fox News instead of continuing on the race, which I knew he wasn't going to win anyway. Yeah. But I like Mike Huckabee. I think he's a nice guy. But I don't think he's, for presidential where we need to be right now.
Yeah.
So it was a cool story. And I think his family, everything I read about him and his family and his kids and preacher's kids, I mean, he seems like a really nice family.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I don't want us to get to a system where we have I think I mentioned something like a separate but equal economic system where this is a blue restaurant, this is a red restaurant. You can eat here, right? You can eat here. I don't want to get to that, but then again, the libertarian in me says if someone has an honest objection to providing a service, I don't see where we should have the heavy hand of government forcing them to provide that service. Most certainly the red hand has gotten the publicity, and sometimes it's good if someone doesn't want fat bearded guys to eat in their restaurant. I'd like to know before I go in.
Right. Well, if you had a red and a blue restaurant and the red one had a bar and a drink called red rum, stay away from it. Remember that?
Good one.
Remember that movie?
I do. Oh, The Shining is it's on my top 10. I can quote the lines from that bad boy.
I'm with you. Being self-employed for it's my 21st year. I would want to be able to say if someone came into my business who was, let's just say they were violent, or I felt like, things were not going to go well. And I've had a few people, I had a person come into one of my businesses one time with 3 knives in their pocket. When they it was just a very strange.
That was me. No.
Reeked of alcohol and just was not making a lot of sense. It sounds like Chuck. No,
it does. But it wasn't me.
But I got really nervous. My sons were in playing ball, and I ended up, trying to sort of maneuver them. I just killed him with kindness. This guy had no clue who he was. He got a little, rough around the edges with me. And I just sort of gently walked him to the front and out, that I wasn't going to be able to help him, but he wasn't going to pay anyway. But it was just, you never know who's going to come into your business. I'd love to have the right to do that because, there's also safety issues. And
sure. Yeah. There's practical concerns.
Political things, my heart's telling me I would never push somebody out because of their political leaning, obviously. No, because I want to respect that opinion.
Exactly, yeah. And we do have, what is, Charlie, we can't see it, buddy. What does it say?
I can't read it.
Sponsored by Charlie, it says.
I love it.
This is the Vipperman household, folks.
Like father, like son. That's some humor there. Good.
Folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this audio-visual presentation of Middle Class Voice. I'm Chuck, he's Dave, and we'll do some more of this, of course, but we want to expand the offerings that we give to people who watch us, and to remind you that go ahead and go to our site on Facebook. Tell us what you think. Do it respectfully. That's all we ask. And we'll keep talking because events keep happening. There's no shortage of stuff to talk about these days. All right.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Dave, you take care. We'll have a good evening.